for you, and then you share that.
Yeah, this is that here, so it's beat up.
Right over.
All that stuff. And then anyone with that link can drop it. It's very cool. Like,
oh, cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
eat.jit.si. With that slash IndiewebCamp.
That's awesome.
We all try to look good.
Has everyone gotten onto the wireless?
Wait, how do you happen that?
Okay. Yeah, there's no office.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Are we just demonstrating here?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know why the coffee's taking so long. Oh, coffee just
This is the last message I sent. Yeah.
yeah. David, could you?
We have 0 viewers, but I hope we get one eventually.
Well, I think the next one I did for 9 years. I did it a little hard now.
When was that?
That was from 1997.
By the way, if you guys are wondering, anything you say in this room can be picked up on that microphone.
No, so we're doing it by Hangouts?
Well, there's a YouTube live link. I just posted it in the chat.
Okay.
But there is a Hangout if they want to join in. So they.
Yeah, we're using. We got the YouTube live link, Dan.
Yeah, so anybody can watch what's going on in this room. Later, I need to invite somebody to join in the Hangout and actually broadcast in this direction. I can do that. Does this mean we can claim Google as an official sponsor?
I don't know if we're actually getting anything sponsorship.
Free streaming service.
All right.
Did you work in that? Or was it a different building?
For some of the time, it was the building. For some of the time, a little townhouse in 82nd Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome to be in the building.
Sure. Yeah. I had to go to work.
Yeah, yeah. You could like wander around. You know. Like,
Okay,
it was
test it.
I can think of right now. This was.
Just make sure.
They really like it. And you know that information desk, right? In the, I sat there. Actually, the other cool thing was I was with my wife.
A little more.
And I, music was closed, and I took my keys, I opened the temple. There. When there's a temple then.
That includes everybody up to you.
Basically whenever I want. I mean, you know, if I went at 3 a.m. and go, why, what are you doing here? Yeah, basically, I got that back.
David, can you queue up the space video, since I don't think most people here have seen it?
Almost all be able to do it through.
It's linked from our introductions.
Is it?
Yeah, I already created that. So IndiewebCamp.org/2016/IC2
Forgot.
/introductions.
Most of you got
This one here.
So it's confirm that the video is working.
Yeah,
I should be able to send it to the Chromecast.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's designed for
I'm
that.
waiting for Aaron to confirm that the video is working before I post it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It really is.
Pause it.
I'm getting to the pausing part.
Squarespace parody?
Okay. Now we're just waiting for confirmation that our live feed is working.
Every time I try to pause it,
Can you hit spacebar to pause it?
I'm trying, but
Yeah.
that's why Chromecasts occasionally act like that.
Okay.
We're just waiting for confirmation that we are live. I can see how many viewers, allegedly. We have 0 viewers.
Nice.
We're very popular today. Either way, it'll be saved somewhere where it can be downloaded and placed somewhere other than a place where we trust will be there forever.
That sounded like somebody did something.
Where is the
No, that's you.
Squarespace parody? I mean, if I want to.
Oh, it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube?
You Google this.
Don't worry, we'll be playing it in a moment. We traditionally.
Oh, okay.
By the way, the noise is my phone getting a notification that you just mentioned my username.
Oh, in IRC?
Yes.
Okay.
Haven't you noticed that whenever you talk about me or the word WordPress in that chat, that I show up?
Oh, yeah.
Even if I'm not there? Not always immediately.
Yes, freedom. There's also a Slack.
Not exactly.
It's called IndiewebCamp, actually?
Which would you recommend?
Well, there's a web-based client that's available, and then of course.
I don't think it works very well.
Well, you-
I always have issues when I try and go.
Yeah, that's why I always install a direct client, but you still have a choice.
Oh, this is new.
Yeah, there's a lot of new stuff.
I haven't seen
We'll be,
the new web version of
Yes, you missed all of the conversations about the design.
It's been a busy few months. Yeah. Come on, Aaron. Aaron was just there. I don't understand. He like disappeared or something?
I think this is new. Yeah. You're in the Slack.
And the Slack
Okay,
syncs
so we
over,
have
so.
confirmation that the
Stream
is
online.
online. Let's post it. Can you hear us, Scanable? I forget his first name.
I'm going to speak a number into the air. Please post it in the chat. 89241. That's an interesting way of testing. Why not? There's a bag. What is in the bag?
Let's put this in the kitchen.
Okay.
Sorry, you failed verification. It was 89241.
Close enough. Close enough. Okay.
Close enough. Video time.
All right. Welcome to IndiewebCamp New York City, the 4th one we've had. And
The second one this year.
you play the video for us, since I don't think most of you have seen this. A few of you may have.
We can't change what the web has become, but we can change what it will be. A better web starts with your website.
Whoa.
It is on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a parody of a Squarespace video.
Yeah. Where literally the only thing that Aaron had to do was change the final few seconds because they never actually said Squarespace. So. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see if I can take control of the screen. What do you think?
I'm disconnecting myself from that.
And I'm changing the input. Okay, all of you here somehow signed up here, which is good. Who here has been to a IndiewebCamp before? I think just 4 of us. Great. Okay. There's been a lot of changes and updates in the last year. And I think that that's been due to, in fact, last 2 years in particular. This is our event page. And this is very new for us that we're actually using a proper event page. I'm just going to jump right in and talk about, the cool thing here is that these 5 people actually RSVP'd using their own websites. This webpage. So if you click on, say, Marty's link there, you can see that's how he posted his RSVP on Marty McGuire and sent a web mention, was what we called, and the page picked up the fact that he's going, and it picked up his icon as well, and his permalink and name. And the same happened for all the rest of the 5 folks here. And then we also listed just everyone who picked up a ticket as well. We did something similar for the first IndieWeb Summit, which was just this past June. And this was a much bigger gathering we held in Portland, and you could see we have about 25 people actually RSVP'd from their own websites, which we're pretty happy with.
How many people were at?
How about 40? Yeah, so over half the people that showed up used their own websites to RSVP. So we were pretty happy with that, yeah. But this is the oldest running one we have. We held the first one in 2011, and that was founded and organized by myself and Aaron Parecki, Amber Case, and Crystal Beasley. And we organized it because we were quite frustrated with both all of our stuff going away on lots of different silos, not really having control of our content or our user experience, combined with being frustrated with the open source world as well. The sort of existing open source, open standards world as of 2010 was very focused on lots of discussions about how do we make these federated social networks, but not a lot of actually getting things working. So we decided to start with, okay, let's actually make this explicit and talk about like why are we doing this and what's different from previous efforts. And this is our homepage here, which is updated as of July 4th. It looks much more like a traditional project homepage. I don't know if how many of you have seen this before this? It used to look more like a wiki. It used to look more like this, right? Right.
By the way, it is a wiki. It's just for the record, it is still a wiki.
It's still a wiki. It's just styled to look like one of those fancy homepages you might find for any particular open source project today. It's amazing what you can do with CSS. Both the tagline here, the IndiewWeb is a people-focused alternative to the corporate web, and the focus of your content is yours, you're better connected, and you are in control. This came out of IndiewebCamp 2014 in San Francisco, which Dan was at, where we basically took the existing IndiewebCamp identity, logo, all that kind of stuff that was very developer-centric. And those of us that have been building, a lot of things get started with developers building it. And we worked with journalists, Dan, and I think Scott was there too. Rosenberg?
Not the one, maybe one.
Yeah. And UX engineers and designers to basically come up with communicating, hey, this is not just for geeks. This is for anyone that wants to own their stuff online. And we think that's really important, that we continue to make the IndieWeb more accessible to more people. So that's how we ended up with this quick summary. I will show you the principles that we started with. And it's actually quite appropriate that we have the Statue of Liberty here as the icon because we're in New York. It's meant to indicate liberty in general. I figure that resonates with people. Can you guys all read that? Yeah. Own your data. So you should own that your information, your content that you create, not just all the silos, the corporations that want you to contribute to them for free, and then they sell advertising on it. So we think people should own the information that they create, and I think that's really important. We emphasize telling people to use your visible data and visible content, like what you publish first, instead of getting distracted by invisible data or metadata or all the like plumbing type stuff. Third, we encourage people to build tools for themselves. And this is one of our original principles, clearly very developer-centric, but building doesn't just mean coding. Building can mean designing, building can mean illustration, building can mean copy editing. Every single sort of creative skill that goes into making a website, goes into an online presence. Consider that building. And that's kind of an important concept here. So we encourage people, build something for yourself, because at least that way you have at least one user. Whereas if you try to build for everyone else, you don't know if anyone will actually use it. And then once you build for yourself, make sure you use it, because that's how you find out if it's actually working or not. And that we call that self-dog fooding. We encourage everyone to document their stuff, including here at IndiewebCamp. As has been mentioned, there's an IRC channel. How many of you are on the IRC channel right now? Okay. Oh, wow, great. There's also a Slack. 3 different ways. How many of you, anyone here use Slack? Anyone here prefer to use Slack? Okay. The Slack and the IRC channel are bridged. So if you find Slack more convenient, like for example, I find the Slack client on iOS more convenient than any IRC client, then you can basically join it by going to, let's see if we get this right. Is it?
Did he move it after the? That's what I was trying to remember when we moved everything else.
I'm connected from IndiewebCamp.
There you go. chat.indieweb.org/Slack.
But it used to be something else. That's what I'm saying. I don't remember what we changed it to.
And it's essentially an open invitation form where you just put in your email and then you get a Slack invitation to the IndiewebCamp Slack team. That's their terminology for it. And then if you go there and you join the general channel.
We're only currently mirroring the general channel.
That's okay.
We have a dev channel also that isn't currently mirrored, but one of these days.
So that's fairly straightforward. And that way you can make sure to stay connected. And if you have any questions, and everyone remotely is participating that way as well. So this is the IRC channel that's going on. And you can see on the right-hand side, Dan just tweeted about us. Excellent. Okay, getting back to the principles. We encourage people to document everything using IRC, using the wiki, and using Etherpad. We have an entire Etherpad set up at etherpad.indieweb.org. How many are familiar with Etherpad? A few folks. Okay, we'll get into that later during session scheduling. It's a great real-time collaborative like note-taking tool. So you don't have to wait for one person to save before you can edit the way the wiki works. It's great for meetings. We encourage people to open source at least some parts of what they create, because we find that the more that we share and build on each other's work, the more that we grow and strengthen as a community. And I think it doesn't matter if you open source everything, but at least try and open source some of what you make and build on others as well. We, in contrast to previous standards and open source efforts, we highly encourage the user interface, user experience, and design over figuring out protocols and data formats and other plumbing aspects. And we think this is really important because usually when you get a room of developers together, they start talking protocols and formats and like how do you build the individual bits on the wire and thing. But the actual challenge is making something that's usable for yourself or anyone else that wants to use your code, and that's why we emphasize UX and design. Build platform agnostic platforms. We encourage folks to make their code work in a very modular way, and that makes it more reusable across different services, different products, different projects. Instead of building one monolithic thing, build things in terms of modules, and I think a lot of folks have done that. Longevity. This is a big one. This is sort of the positive framing of the site deaths problem. How many are familiar with the site deaths problem? Lost something to some silo going down. Yeah, that's. Here, I'll bring up a quick just since the last time that we held this camp, so we keep track of all the things that have shut down, that lose people's contents, and starting.
We were last here in January the 24th.
Okay, so we scroll back to January. Plancast had just shut down, basically. And then Google Code announced that it's shut down. That mailbox.cloud, I don't even remember that one. Shelfari, Dropbox Carousel. If you had your photos on there.
There's still in the Dropbox.
There's still in your Dropbox?
Fortunately, yeah.
Yahoo Search. A Bitcoin web wallet service, and that brings a whole different set of challenges. The Experience Project, Picasa. So Google has a long history of shutting down various different projects and people's content. MetaMind, which I don't remember what that did. Revolve. Oh yeah, this was a particularly interesting one. If you had a piece of hardware that you bought from this company, Revolve, it essentially upgraded its software and stopped working. Shut down. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, that's something shutting down, but it's not something people losing data, right?
Well, in this case, that's losing functionality. So if you bought one of those things and you connected it up to all of your stuff stops working. Unless you buy a competing platform, and hopefully all your stuff is compatible.
Yeah. Poetica, which was a annotation service. There's a lot of annotation services that have been shut down over the years, but that's the most recent one.
That was great.
Yeah. Blaine Cook had done such a great job. And he's been very active in the open internet world, so he knows how painful that is to do. ThinkUp, which was Anil Dash and Gina Trapani's startup.
No.
Did I get that wrong?
I don't know, they were both there.
Gina somebody. I forgot.
It's the wrong.
No, it was the one who was at Lifehacker. And
Yeah, Lifehacker.
used to do that show that Kim Marks.
Yep.
Soon to be on this list.
They shut down as well in July. Read lists. And that was the most recent one I think we have documented. But it happens, like you can see this like on the sidebar here, 2016 is Meton, 2015, 2014. They just like every year, like this doesn't stop happening. And given that frustration, like I exported all my posts from Counts, but they're still in some XML file somewhere that I haven't managed to post anywhere. And you lose the permalinks anyway. If you had linked to your content on one of these services, those links will be broken forever.
And you lose the conversation.
And you lose the conversation. Yeah, very true. So we try and build for longevity, as in what is the way to like make your content survive and make your links survive, and we try and figure all that out, make your domain survive. And these are all important to us because we want to keep our posts working. We want to keep the conversations going the way the web used to work, where you would post something and you would link to someone else's stuff, and if they want to reply to you, they would link to your things. And so that conversation depends on people's links working. Second to last important principle of IndiewWeb is plurality, which means there is no one IndiewWeb project that you install. I get this question every once in a while. Great, I'm bought into all this IndiewWeb stuff. Where's the IndiewWeb install? And the answer is there isn't one, because there's no one IndiewWeb install. There are a number of different projects you can use to get on the IndiewWeb, depending on what functionality you want, how technical you want to get or be, how much you want to customize it or not. And that's a really important spectrum of choices. Yes?
What does that mean, like an IndiewWeb install? What?
They want a software package. So basically, download, install it, suddenly you're on the IndiewWeb. There is no such thing.
But, I mean, as a sort of newbie to the IndiewWeb, it would be easier for people like me. Okay, maybe there's 5 alternatives. It's just something that was a guide to how to get started. I mean, that's going to be my first question.
That's coming up. That's this right here.
All right.
So we do have suggestions, we do have advice.
I see. Oh, cool.
We don't just have one thing you could do, because you can do whatever you want.
Understood, yeah.
And this effort of focusing on the principles instead of one specific project has made this a lot stronger, because I would say about half the people that join the IndiewebCamp community end up building their own, which is pretty amazing, because everyone clearly has an itch that they want to scratch themselves. Like they have specific functionality they want on their website, whether it's a normal stream of posts like a blog, or they want a resume site, or they want a portfolio site, or they just want a cool homepage, like back in the GeoCities day. And the goal of IndieWeb is to empower all of those, and to empower all of those to interoperate, and to give that element of choice and agency to the individual user. Because everyone is so used to having to pick from whatever a corporation offers. And lastly, we encourage people to always have fun, which is something that's been a bit lost in kind of the anesthetic world of today's silos, where everyone's Facebook page looks essentially the same. You get to change a couple of images maybe, or Twitter, or Google Plus, or anywhere else. Gone are the days of sort of MySpace and GeoCities, where people experimented and created amazing, sometimes crazy looking things, but at least they were independent and they were expressive. So those are our principles. This is an overview of the schedule.
Fallen back about half an hour.
Have we?
I think we didn't start until about half past.
That's okay. I think we're right up to demos.
Yeah.
So before I go further,
Well, your clock says 7:58, so we're well ahead.
yes, my laptop stays in Pacific time zone. That's kind of how I stay grounded. That's my mental time zone.
Have you considered UTC?
I have, and it doesn't work well because of the day boundary problem.
No, more. There are some people who have said they're just going to give up on time zones entirely, which I find interesting.
Yep. Okay, so that's the overview of the day. The next thing I'm going to quickly go over is the code of conduct. We adopted this a few years ago based on a lot of great work by others. This is our open code of conduct. It's something we encourage people to copy and paste and reuse in their own communities. The short version is, I'll go ahead and read that. Be respectful of other people. Respectfully ask other people to stop if you're being bothered. And if you can't resolve an issue for any reason, contact staff. And staff for this meetup is myself, I'm Tomtek. This is David Shansky and Emma. Where did Emma go? And Emma. So that's your staff for the day. If you have any problems or anything awkward comes up, go ahead and ping one of us privately and we'll happily work it out. I encourage everyone to go ahead and read through the code of conduct. We try to encourage basically positive behavior, and we document what's not positive behavior, like forms of harassment and such. So we're pretty happy with this code of conduct. It's been readopted by a few other communities, including the Yes by Yes Yes community, which is a very different conference that is organized by 5 women co-founders, which is kind of awesome. So that's the code of conduct. All right, I'm going to show you what Etherpad looks like. This is what Etherpad looks like. If you go to etherpad.indieweb.org, it just lets you set up a new pad. So for example, if I go to the wiki homepage of IndiewebCamp New York City. Yes. On the schedule, right. There's a link here. You can create a link, etherpad.indieweb.org/any name, and it will create that pad for you. So if I click on that, let's see if it works. It loads it, and there it is. We have a blank Etherpad to start with.
And anybody can type in there, which means you can have a shared document for every session that you have.
And you can go ahead and enter your name in the top right corner there, or your URL, as some of us take into doing by default. And the nice thing about having a main one like this is that when you create other Etherpads, you can paste the links here. And that way everyone can use this as a starting point. You can add yourself. I don't know why that opened up. Oh no. It overloaded. Option C to open a chat. Okay. So that's Etherpad. Okay. That takes us to demos and introductions. So at the beginning of every IndiewebCamp, we give everyone an opportunity to say, hey, I name what your name is, and show your personal site for like a minute or two. Just say, this is what I've gotten working. This is, maybe if you have some ideas as to what you want to work on, that's great. I will go ahead and do that first as a demonstration. My website is contact.com, and I've built it like a traditional blog, but I post all kinds of different kinds of content on it. So most recently, I posted the link that David posted in IRC, which I have code that apparently is able to automatically embed a player for that, which is kind of cool. I didn't know it was live streaming from my website. So Dan, to your point, perhaps not completely IndieWeb in terms of the back end, but now anyone can go to my site and watch the stream. You don't have to go to YouTube to watch the stream. It's embedded, so that's at least a step forward there. And I just post notes like you might see on Twitter. I'll post an occasional image. If anyone's interested in notifications, I'm kind of in a post-vacation and notification holiday state of mind and trying to understand what is it that gets people to habitually check notifications, and is that like a habit that you can break?
What do you think?
What's that?
What's your preliminary conclusion?
Well, my preliminary observation is that I've been able to, I have had less and less of a draw to like check my Facebook notifications since I got back from vacation, where I was offline for about 11 days. And so it's like that, it has basically stayed at 99 plus. And I'm like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. Instead of feeling an urgency to check it because someone might be trying to, interact with me.
So you can turn off those badges, so you won't even see the 99.
Yeah?
Well, I know you can do it on the iPhone. I'm not sure what
This is in the Facebook UI, yeah, in the toolbar.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. So you're actually going to Facebook.
Right, like if you're actually on Facebook.
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, I don't know if you can turn off that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my website. It's got lots. I post pictures once in a while. I've got my events and stuff coming up here in the right column, and that's it. And on that, I'll hand it off to who wants to show their website next. You have two options. You can use either Chromecast it, or there's a VGA and mini DVI connector up here and a chair.
I think there's also HDMI. We also have HDMI to VGA also, apparently. Do you remember which input it is?
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chromecast is on.
This is my main domain, I guess. ericangelewis.com. It's a pretty basic installation of WordPress that I put on it like 3 months ago after, going in between different things on the website. I mainly blog here about stuff I do with software development for the web. I recently figured out how to install Linux on a computer, so I blog about that, and like other stuff like that. Don't do Linux on your Mac. And then I guess I have a lot of other like little projects that I try to like share and like stuff I've made. I'm mostly on Twitter on the internet, which I guess is not very into, but I make a lot of like one-off little web apps, like how a quadtree works, which is data structure for like quick traversal of data. I wanted to like learn about how that works, so I made this like simulation show.
This is on your website, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess like these are, I use GitHub IO pages for like one-off stuff. It's just like HTML because it's really easy. Also not IndiewWeb. Yeah, that's great.
Why is it not?
Because it's hosted on someone else's platform, right?
Well, IndieWeb is independent. That doesn't mean that somebody else isn't hosting it.
Where are the URLs? Let's ask that question.
Like, I guess you don't see the address bar, but like ericangelos.github.io.
Okay.
/ flying object screensaver. So yeah. Is that meant to be the program? Yeah, you're supposed to upload an image and then it'll replace the broken image and fly that around this thing. Love anything that recontextualizes broken. I love the broken image. So yeah, that's interesting. But wait, but GitHub.io, that's like not indie because someone else. I guess it's like.
Could you download it and transfer? Admittedly, you could point another URL at it and rewrite it. But the question is it portable? Is the first one. Could you,
Sure.
And could you replace their URL with your own so that if you did move it, nobody would notice? So by itself, using GitHub is not inherently not IndieWeb. Plenty of people use GitHub. It's just more, one, where's the other copy? And two, can you move it without anybody noticing?
Mm-hmm. And that's really where that starts is if you're using links that are on your domain, then it almost doesn't matter where you're hosting it because that's just backend.
Sure.
And everyone has to host stuff somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's on GitHub or a paid hosting provider or a box in your house. And that kind of depends on how much effort you want to spend on it versus how much independence you want. That's kind of up to you. But as long as you're using your URL, you have the freedom to change that at any point in time. So you could start with GitHub, move it somewhere else, and no one else would know. But if you could, one of the things people do is use a subdomain like projects.ericandrewlewis.com. Could be your URL for all your GitHub projects, your GitHub, all the things you're posting on GitHub.io, and that way, no one can tell that they're on GitHub.io, right? Yeah. But I think that's there's some instructions for setting that up on the wiki. Yeah, so that's something that maybe you'll consider for the weekend. Cool, thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
I guess I can go next.
Cool. All right, Aaron. Let's see. Are you also going to use the Chromecast?
Yeah.
He's very in tune with that. He brought his own.
By the way, everyone, thank Emma for offering this amazing space and Dahlberg with this beautiful setup and rooms. So.
Thanks, David and Thompson, for actually setting.
It takes a team.
I thought you were going to thank me for finding the controls for the air conditioner.
No, I knew one of them was, okay?
There's a second one over there, but it will reset at 12:45, so somebody should remember to check it again.
This is my site. This is actually a.
What's the URL? Sorry.
Aaron.dorf.in.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So it's a just basic HTML page that I fill up and send over or sync over to the server. Most of my stuff though kind of lives like on subdomains, like my resume also shows up on a resume page. My blog is on its own domain. Like it's all under the dorf.in domain, but elsewhere. And my blog post, so I blog on my own blog. I'm also on the WordPress core team. So I blog on the WordPress development blog, kind of pull all of that in here for, showing up where I'm writing most recently. So I tried to RSVP correctly, but apparently I did it wrong because it never showed up on the actual page. So I would like to figure out an easy way to be able to, do those RSVPs, probably from WordPress. I think that one thing that holds back adoption of open standards is lack of equity everywhere.
like a list of tickets?
I mean, I know, I owe you feedback on that blog post. But yeah, so I mean, go out here.
Very cool. Clearly, you guys will have a WordPress session later. I can tell. That's awesome. Oh, Emily, you took over the screen. Very good.
Oh, sorry, were you done?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, I thought that was your passing it over. Hello everyone, my name is Emma. This is my website, it's emmahodge.org. I made it at the IndiewebCamp that was hosted in New York in January during the snowstorm. And yeah, subsequently, I actually went to IndiewebCamp in Dusseldorf this summer. And I have a little post from there. And yeah, I'm not a developer and I don't work, I don't work on in tech or on things, but I work for a consulting firm that focuses on economic and social development, and I'm really interested in thinking about different ways that people have access to information, and I think that IndiewebCamp is the IndiewWeb is an interesting way to explore that, and I'm also just personally interested in learning more about how the web works, how websites work, and how to how to be a part of that. Things that I want to do this weekend. I also tried to do a WebMention RSVP. Admittedly, did not spend that much time trying to figure it out, but wasn't able to do that. So would love to know how to do that. I tried to post that on my events page, but that didn't work. And I also would like to write a blog post on. I was just living in Geneva for about 3.5 months and wanted to write a sort of like travel, short-term stay blog in Geneva about things that I recommend. Oh, and maybe one last thing that I'd like to say is that I really appreciated both at the first IndiewWeb event that I went to and then the most recent one in Dusseldorf. I really enjoyed the opportunity to learn from people who know a lot more about this topic than I do, and to really appreciated how open the IndiewWeb community is. I'm passing the baton to Marcy.
I just have one question.
Yes.
Based on your statement. So how many people around this table would classify themselves as not working in something related to development?
I don't have a job right now, so.
Let's say you're in general. If you had a job, would it be in that field? Okay, so you're in the middle there. So there are several people in the room who don't work or have not recently worked in a job that directly involves development.
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out, just because there's always the assumption.
It's good. It's about half non-development jobs. Yeah, I think that's kind of the ratio that the IndiewWeb camps have been moving towards. Like we started like 100% developer, and we've kind of shifted to about 50-50, which I think is a great sign, because this means that we're making the community and the approach and all that way more accessible. And I think that's the right thing to do, to just make it more human, more appealing. Cool. Thanks, Emma.
Right. I'm Marty McGuire. My website is martymcguire.re, which is terrible to say out loud, but it looks lovely and makes me very happy. I learned about IndiewebCamp sometime last summer when I was reading about like unhosted web apps and kind of other ways to own your own data and host your own stuff. And have been lurking since then. So like reading the wiki, peeking into the IRC from time to time to see what people are working on, and sort of like slowly cargo culting my own website within the web standards, hoping basically that it would get me writing blog posts again and publishing things, and it hasn't, but I've had a good time building everything. One interesting thing, and I don't have an S index, but like I use this to make little posts, post little photos. This was an example of me writing a aspect of IndieWeb is something that, as a sometimes web security person, kind of stresses me out, in the sense that you never actually own your domain, you're renting your domain, and there are processes through which it can be taken from you. So this is an example of my website running on the Tor network. So this is a Tor onion service, and I can zoom here, but not there. And that is not a good URL, so I can paste that somewhere if somebody's interested. But this is running on the same machine, so like it's all the same content. My website is just a static site, but this is served over the Tor network. So if you use the Tor browser, then when you visit my website, you're not hitting the public DNS infrastructure, so there's no domain to register. It's encrypted end-to-end, but you don't have to install an SSL certificate or get an SSL certificate, so there's no, what do they call it, like public key infrastructure for certificates on the web. And I don't necessarily think this is like the future of the web, but I think it's an interesting thing to explore, and building things on the sort of network has implications. So I've seen other indie web meetups, people talking about fun stuff like using service workers to make their page a single page app and do offline caching. And all of that requires SSL, which will never work on the Tor network, like given current standards. Facebook has the only functioning SSL cert on a Tor website right now, and that goes away in October. So interesting stuff there. I thank Kevin Marks, who may be online or may be listening to this later, for all of his notes from the Decentralized Web Summit earlier this summer, which is where I saw a lot of this stuff.
What's your preferred connection method? You have that set up, or you want to?
How about a VGA connector? Would that work for you? Yeah, Chromecast. Sweet. Okay.
We should add that to the planning page.
Yep.
I have one I brought.
Chromecast?
Well, I brought one last time, but actually worked pretty well.
Yeah, it's working much faster than passing a cable around.
And they're only $30.
Amazing this works. So hello, I'm Dan Gilmore. I'm more of a dilettante in this world than a practitioner, but I care a lot about it because I'm quite worried about the direction we're going with our technology and communications. Kind of radical re-centralization is going on. I'm worried a lot about implications of that from all kinds of perspectives. But my 3 or 2/3 time day gig is teaching at Arizona State University's Concord Journalism School. And I live in the Bay Area. I go there 1 week a month and teach online projects for the school. I used to be a journalist. Was a columnist in San Jose Mercury News for many years, running tech and business and policy. So I got involved in this pretty early. And a couple of years ago, after coming to the IndiewebCamp piece for Slate to describe what was going on, which I followed it pretty closely since then from afar, so I'm glad to be back. And you mentioned the meeting earlier this summer. This is a piece that Kevin Marks and I did from the Decentralized Web Summit that was in San Francisco. It was amazing. And I'm also very excited about the possibilities of some of the things that I saw, including it's got a funny name, but it's really it's amazing work, the interplanetary file system, and other things that could truly bring some decentralization to the part. As Brewster Kahle, who organized the meeting, he wants to lock the web open. That's a fascinating
That's locked with an L?
Yeah. So,
Where is this article?
I just put it in my IRC.
okay. And this is my site. It's a WordPress site. I'm very basic. However, I've changed hosting companies and really something really doesn't work. When I try to do updates, sometimes I get 404s from my from the server, and Kevin is working on helping fix this. But this is basically where I live, and one of the all the indie web stuff just stopped working when so I'm going to reinstall it whenever. But the current plan is basically to just export the data, create a new thing, and then re-import the data. That'll work. We tried that, and it basically failed. So we're working on it. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. And I'm working on a new book about what we human beings can do about this re-centralization, both individually and in our community. I don't have an ETA on that, but I'm hoping by mid-year next year. And so that's, and I want to thank Kevin and everyone else involved in this. I've learned a ton.
I guess that brings to me.
How do I uncast?
There's a stop button. I should turn that off.
Yeah.
That's what happens anytime you mention my username in chat.
Oh, yeah.
My phone does that. Or when you mention the word WordPress.
Hello, everyone. I'm Avi Walensky, and my website is aviwalensky.com, although DNS is currently propagating because I switched registrars and didn't realize that I had to change my A record, which I just did now. And anyway, hopefully soon it'll be back live. But I wanted a site that would always stay up online and didn't have to pay hosting. So I saw that moo.com, the business card company, gave away some free hosting package, so I took advantage of it. And you can see my website looks like a business card. And then, of course, a couple other bells and whistles. This is my LinkedIn, so my resume essentially. And then you can't see the top nav, it's being cut off, but there is one. My Twitter stream. These are my blog posts. And my Foursquare, which I haven't used in about a year. But I should probably update this. I'd like to move my personal site off of this platform this weekend, I guess, to something more indie web. I've been having a lot of fun with the Chalice framework, which is a Python micro framework, essentially a wrapper on top of HTTP, similar to Flask if you used Flask or Bottle before. It basically looks like this. It's hosted on like AWS Lambda or Google Functions, essentially, so you don't have to think about running a virtual machine or managing a virtual machine. It's completely serverless, and it's basically a couple of lines of Python, and you're up and running with a simple web application. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun with this package. It's in the AWS labs, and yeah, just probably overkill for a personal site, but I don't know. Chalice. You can't see this tab. Okay, yeah, it's CHALICE, like. And it's on AWS Labs, github.com/AWS Labs. It's pretty cool. I mean,
This is a Chalice framework?
So Chalice is a Python wrapper on top of HTTP that is designed to deploy and live on top of Amazon Lambda. So basically, you have a container that you don't have to manage, like a traditional virtual machine. You can really, it's really nice to work with. It's really been a pleasure. I recommend if you're from the Python world to play around with it. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. It just came out about a couple weeks ago, so it looks very similar to Flask if you used Flask before. But yeah, that's my plan. Or maybe I'll just throw up a static site, post it on S3 or something. I don't know. We'll see. But time to move off of Moo or Flavors.me and something that I own. Okay, great. I think that is it. I will disconnect.
I believe we're posing for a picture now.
Oh.
You don't have to. You can act casual too.
This is me acting now. I was looking at my computer before you did that, and I went back looking.
So that gives us a good excuse to show one of the features of our IRC channel.
And after that, I'll do something.
So following on from what Avi just showed us, okay, so here's our IRC channel here. I don't know if you can quite read that, but I've been taking notes about everyone's introductions in the IRC channel, and we actually have an IRC log at chat.indieweb.org. So if you go to that, you can see that there's a real-time log coming up here in our main channel, and it'll just keep updating as you keep typing. But the feature of the log that of the IRC I want to demonstrate is we have this very friendly robot in the IRC channel called Loki, and Loki does things like report mentions from Twitter and such. You've probably seen that earlier when Dan was tweeting. But one of the more useful things that Loki does is if you just ask in the channel what is something, like if I say what is chalice, right?
Okay.
Watch what happens. So if I say what is chalice, Loki says, it looks like we don't have a page for chalice yet. Would you like to create it? So you can either click on that, log into the wiki, and create that page, or if you, like Avi, go ahead and try typing in chalice is space, and then define what it is.
All right, I will do that.
So this is a demonstration of a pretty key feature in the wiki. If you hear someone mention a piece of technology or a product that you're not familiar with, just go ahead and ask what is it. And if we have it documented, Loki will tell you. If we don't have it documented, Loki will say, hey, I don't know what that is. And that gives the opportunity for anyone who does know what it is to go ahead and type in a definition to answer the question. And if you answer it in a very simple X is whatever kind of format, which Avi is typing right now.
I did already. Slack room.
You did?
Yeah. There it is.
Okay, so it works across time. So there you can see Avi typed in chalice, the Python micro framework that lives on top of it. It's not this much a Flask or Bobble. And Loki says, okay. And then now someone asks, yeah, well done, what's chalice? Loki actually tells you. So this way, this is one of our encouragements for folks to use as much plain language in the IRC channel as possible so that it's more accessible to more people, rather than being very text heavy, jargon heavy. So if someone uses jargon, we kind of encourage anyone to say, hey, just go ahead and ask what it is. Like, I think, what was the earlier question? Someone mentioned web mention. So if I say, what is web mention? And there it tells you. And then it links to the page on the wiki, which explains it further.
Does it have a list of words that of phrases and words that it automatically knows what to go to?
Every single page on the wiki.
So basically anything you add, for example, we have this one here.
So that's a title.
Yeah, people have put in a few joke ones in there.
Did y'all make Loki, or is that something?
Aaron made Loki. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I think Loki is like the coolest community hack.
I forget which one.
Very smart.
So that was a quick little diversion to show you, since this is the first I've heard of chalice, and you said it's pretty new, right?
It's a couple weeks old.
There you go, and now we've defined it, so there's a rough idea what it is.
And there's a page that can be.
And I updated it to include the link to the project.
Nice. Yeah. You got the idea, Dan. That's exactly right.
But any of those pages, if you go in, you can update and then have more information.
Very good.
Okay. Are we ready for? Has everyone shown something? David? Okay.
I will be last.
And I think you're up.
Okay. I think you saw some of this earlier when I was playing with it. But this is my somewhat bare bones website. So this is running WordPress. So I have a very simple design here where
Average Finkel died?
he did.
Oh, really?
And I just saw him a few months ago. So unfortunately, that individual passed away. There's a picture of me.
He was in so many movies.
But here I am responding to this article that apparently there's a remake of Are You Being Served, the classic British sitcom coming back. So every so often I post something. I always say I should post more, but I think everybody does. So here I am reposting an article I was afraid was going to be lost about commercial airline service to White Lake, New York. I spend a lot of time up there and I just didn't want to lose that article that was there. Here's an article, Lessons Learned from IndiewebCamp and WordCamp, and a few other things, but this is again all running WordPress, so I do have a...
What theme is that?
Oh, I wrote this one. Okay. And that's why it doesn't look very nice. I admit I aesthetically, it's... So I also, when I want to play with things, I basically switch over to a test site. So this is my test site for any type of design that I'm doing. So you can see all sorts of strange posts on here. And in the back end, it is a standard WordPress site. And a whole bunch of things are broken, including apparently my ability to move a mouse around fluidly. But I'll show you what that actually looks like. If I were to add a post to this, there are all these different types of reactions that are set up. Admittedly, this is every single possible one that I could possibly set. If you actually looked at my live site, I don't even use all of them. I just reserve the words for future use. And why is my mouse jumping? Okay, if they want to play it that way, I'll use tab complete. So here, let's see. That's a setting left over from when I was experimenting with having my posts use the time zone appropriate to where I was. But here, currently a little off because, as I said, this is where I do all my testing, is the back end of that URL response feature. So if I put in a URL, let's say this one, it should, assuming that I haven't broken it in test mode, yeah, I've broken it in test mode, pull in information on the name of the site, and if it was a post instead of the main page, it would, sorry, as I said, for some reason the Chromecast is supposed to jump a bit. It would also pull in the published information. So if I posted this and set one of those reaction types, for example, mark, favorite, what have you, then it would basically do the markup for one of those particular relationships. There's also a bunch of other stuff here that's being tested. So as I said, this is where I put all of the stuff that I'm testing. And I've just recently deployed a new testing bed so that I can make some changes to the system using two test sites that I put together. So here is one of the ones that I've created for testing purposes. So here's my fake person. So basically, I have my two people communicating with each other. So Costello liked this. So I've just set up these test sites so they can talk to each other. So I can try a bunch of different things. By the way, the theme here is actually one called Independent Publisher, which the developer was convinced to actually write his own display for Web Mentions too. So this particular theme actually goes about Web Mentions, which admittedly not all themes do. So I'm going to be continuing in that vein because there are a lot more things I want to do because I have a few things that are messed up right now. And I guess that's it for now.
Do those personas do who's on first?
I was going to do that as one of the tests, but I set that up last week basically so I could have two sites talking to each other, even though they're hosted on the same server. I just wanted to, what I was doing before that was some basic testing and basically mentioning myself, which doesn't really allow me to test certain things. So I wanted to basically have two independent new installs and make sure that everything was working correctly. Also, I so rarely get to test with a clean install because my installs have so much garbage in them from me testing other things that I can't be 100% sure it would work for a new person.
Well, I did want to do a quick demo of using Quill to post to my website.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Oh, you've got it working with Chromecast even. Cool.
Yeah, this is a tool that Aaron Parecki made that can post to any site that has.
This is from your Android?
From my Android phone, yeah. So, let's see. I'm now using IndiewebCamp to log into my website. Maybe it's thinking about it. There it goes.
Y'all haven't seen this before. This is pretty slick. He's using his mobile device to post to his personal website, which is kind of one of the end goals of making all this stuff work. So you can use your mobile device just with your own site and not some third-party app.
I'm not sure why it didn't bounce me over. This might be a broken demo. Let's see. No, here we go. Okay, so this is the Quill mobile interface that I often forget how to use. I want to post notes.
It looks a lot like you're posting a tweet.
It does. And it even gives you the handy tweet count. I don't have things sending directly to Twitter, but in the upper right you can see the
characters left.
The characters left, and then the photo. You can actually post photos as well. Wow. And I think my website supports this. I can tag it with my location. This is all in Aaron's tool. And then when I hit post, this is going to submit to his tool, which then posts it to my website.
How does his tool know how to find your website? Like,
So,
do you register your website in his tool and you tell him?
in a way, so there's a standard called MicroPub that defined indie web folks have been putting together and is actually now it's in candidate review.
Recommendation as of
Candidate recommendation for an W3C standard, and that means like this will now be a documented standard that other platforms like WordPress or things can implement. And I don't know why this is demo guides. But the way that works is basically on my homepage, I have some metadata that says, hey, if you want to send MicroPub, like here's the URL on my website to do that. And Quill knows how to find that. And then when I actually post something to Quill, maybe I should have just right here. But the idea is that it posts that to that endpoint on my website, and then like from there it's sort of up to my code. Like I hand wrote some stuff that takes that MicroPub, which is like nice and simple format, and runs through like all of my web's goofy stuff. Okay, so it actually went through. I'm getting a page not found because now it takes my website a minute to like crunch and generate a static website, and then refreshing, then it shows up.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
That's awesome.
Oh, well, took a little bit of time.
So your website is your own handwritten code server website?
Yeah, so it's basically Avi was talking about Flask. It's a Python backend that the actual website that you browse is all just static HTML. It's just generated and stuffed onto a server.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of little endpoints that are Python and
That support
micropose. Yeah, micropose one of them, and then off with IndieWeb is the other. So like when Quill tries to post to my site, it says like, hey, here's the authorization that I'm allowed to do this. So I have a little layer that's like, hey, IndieWeb, is this real? And then so like randos can't just publish to my site, and that's the login thing. Thanks for indulging. Sorry, guys.
And I think you just
That's really
posted
cool.
the first photo of IndiewebCamp New York City to a personal website.
Oh, nice.
So well done.
Sorry.
It's real. It's a success.
Big thumbs up.
While you were distracted, something.
Well, web.
It is, yeah. So it's at quill.p3k.io.
Quill dot.
Just drop it in the. Here it is.
What's the name of your site code backend?
I just call it micropub because it's all like, it's just me hacking on stuff. So like I have no name for it.
Okay.
It has a Git repository like on my personal Git hosting, but I'm very embarrassed by it, so I'm not ready to share it. It's just like me trying to cargo cult micropub and be like, can I make this go? So I would love to share it in the future as soon as I am less embarrassed by my work. Like I can write Python, but I can't organize Python code very well. And as soon as I learn a little bit more and make it a little nicer, I will happily post it. Chalice looks very interesting.
It is very interesting. Pretty excited about it. But
This is great.
what are you using? What framework are you using for Quill? For the API? For the REST API?
Micropub is
that's the.
that's yeah. So like I have a little chunk of Python code that implements the micropub standard. So like Quill sends me just an HTTP post that's like full of data, and that's described by micropub. And yeah, so my code just like eats that and spits out a file for Jekyll, which is what I use to generate my static site, and then a long series of dumb pipes like say like, hey, there's a new file, let's put it on my Git repo. My Git repo says, hey, you should regenerate your website. Yeah, it's a kludge, but it all works amazingly. I'm as surprised as anything.
Hey, you successfully posted a photo live on a mobile device, so I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. Should be proud of that.
And it looks like IndiewebCamp just works by referencing all the other social networks.
Yes.
Yeah.
So isn't that though kind of like opposite of IndiewebCamp? Like basically saying like our auth is going to require you to not be independent. Like why not OAuth as standard?
It is using
It is
OAuth.
off.
Yeah, OAuth.
It's an extension to off.
Okay.
So it's a way of saying like, I'm delegating my identity to this, but because those services all support OAuth, you're saying like, yeah, the people on this website that are authorized to do stuff are this guy on Twitter, this guy on Facebook, and like those all happen to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And because IndiewebCamp is like, who is Aaron develops that and maintains that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he has built this very nice service that knows how to talk.
Is he writing a book on the wall?
I think he was. I'm not sure if he's still.
So basically, like my website says, hey, this guy on Twitter is allowed to do stuff on my website, and IndiewebCamp says, oh, well, let me see if you're this guy on Twitter, and it all uses OAuth.
That's a great.
It's basically linked through Realme.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it doesn't have to be Twitter. It could be your own authentication.
Hi guys.
Hey, welcome.
So if your personal website is like IndiewebCamp, you can use that.
If you guys would like a name
That's how
tag, there's a stack
yeah,
right
so like
outside.
when I did that login stuff,
So then we'll know who you are.
I was like, yeah, you should have a login.
Not that you can't introduce yourself also.
My front page just has just set up as like
There's name tags right there on that table.
Was there coffee? Was there coffee?
Yeah, there's coffee in the kitchen. Might be a little cold now.
Any kind of off that you want,
So the microphone is right next to you. You might want to push it a little further.
So I mean, have no
With your left
I
hand,
could
you
do
want
it
to pull
probably
towards the center. Towards the center, towards that big block.
That's right. I think
That's
like
your pickup
they're
area.
implementing one of the cool things about India is if you just like go there, it kind of tells you how to use it. And this is what I love about Aaron's tools. Like if you go to a bill and like you don't know what to do, it's like here's how to get started. If you punch in your webpage, your domain to log in, it's like, sorry, I don't know how to log into this. Here's how you can help me to log in.
What is Aaron's full name?
Aaron correctly.
Oh.
He was lurking around the chat earlier.
P-A-R-E.
Oh.
Yeah, you'll see him all over.
And that IndiewebCamp discussion is a perfect segue to the next thing we're talking about, which is IndiewebCamp building blocks. So one thing we have found from running various IndiewebCamps, especially when most people, it's their first IndiewebCamp, is an overview of the IndiewebCamp building blocks turns out to be pretty helpful for folks. And we have a page on the wiki that lists them all, but probably the best introduction is via the Getting Started page, because this is a great place to on-ramp. Like whether you have a website or you don't have a website, there are steps here you can take to improve your website, to set it up and improve it. And it's like, oh yeah, I've already got that, and skip to the next step, that kind of thing. But this is basically about getting started on the IndiewebCamp. And the key here is that we give people a few different tools to work on it. Like if you just want to work on it on your own, there's a site called Indiewebify.me that kind of walks you through step by step. Okay, you've got your domain name, what do you do next? That kind of thing. We also encourage folks to join the IndiewebCamp chat and basically just start asking questions. So like you can just show up and you can ask, and there's plenty of helpful people there.
And a robot.
Different kinds, and a very helpful robot, as you've seen. So that's low key. Right. So we actually tell people to do that before even like getting a personal domain. Because as soon as you start taking these steps, you're going to have questions. So you might as well start with, well, how do I answer my questions first? And then that's a little meta getting started step. But does everyone here have a personal domain? I think I heard that everyone does, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll skip that. You've gotten that. Do you have a place for your content where it's hosted? I think everyone has some place where the content's hosted. Maybe not ideally where they want it, but there's lots of different options, from paid web hosting to, like I said, having a home server, or even just starting with GitHub pages. And these are all valid ways of hosting your content. It's totally
If anybody
fine.
wants a home server, I'm prepared to bring a free Raspberry Pi tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
I'm upgrading. So I'll be happy to give the old one to anybody who wants it.
You run that at home as a web server?
I run it as a web server, but not a public one. I run it as a private one with a proxy public one.
Cool.
I track planes.
Nice.
Sir, what's the Wi-Fi?
That's right.
Oh, great, thanks.
So those are kind of like the two key starting points, right? You have to have a name on the web, and you have to have some place to put your stuff, regardless of how you do it. And that's how we get people started. So that takes us to setting up your homepage and web sign-in. Web sign-in is the general protocol that IndiewebCamp implements. This is what Marty was describing. And the basic premise of web sign-in is that there's all these services out there which will validate your identity already, right? Whether it's like Twitter or GitHub or Facebook or all these different sign-in services. And so rather than reinvent yet another one, we decided that it was actually easier for people to take whatever one they were used to using and then bridge that to their personal site. And that's the short version of what web sign-in and therefore IndiewebCamp is about. So if you check out IndiewebCamp, we have a nice wiki page that describes it, describes why we do it, how to set it up, and that links to IndiewebCamp.com.
IndiewebCamp, the page.
Yeah, the wiki page about it. So you can see that there's actually a number of different providers for signing in here with IndiewebCamp that IndiewebCamp supports currently. And it essentially supports all these OAuth-based services, plus a few more like GPG or email or even SMS. And The idea here is that if, like I said, if all you have is a homepage, and a lot of people on their homepage link to say, here's my GitHub, here's my Twitter, just by adding rel equals me, so a little bit of code to that link, and then on your Twitter profile linking to your personal website, or on your GitHub profile linking to your personal website, which you should be doing anyway. You should be encouraging people to see your indie website from whatever corporate website they're on. Then IndieAuth can say, oh, you claim to be this person on this silo, and on that silo, it says that that account is also connected to your website. And so by completing that loop, IndieAuth is able to use the sign-in method of any one of those social networks as a proxy for signing into your own website. And the beauty of that is that something like Quill, when Quill uses IndieAuth, it's not actually keeping track of where you used to sign in. So when Marty used Quill to sign in, I didn't quite notice which button you pressed.
I use GitHub.
So Marty happened to use GitHub, right? And GitHub has lots of options like two-factor auth and all these things that you can depend on. But when the IndieAuth flow came back to Quill, Quill had no idea that Marty had used GitHub. And that's the key IndieWeb piece of it. The IndieWeb application Quill, by using IndieAuth, the only thing it knew is that Marty had authenticated as Marty McGuires. That's it. So it insulates the IndieWeb applications from anything that's like silo-specific identity. He could come tomorrow and sign in with Twitter on his IndieAuth. And Quill would have no idea that he'd used some other authentication method. So we're using the silos, to answer your question, Aaron, as kind of ephemeral authentication. Like, it works today just because you choose to use it today, but there's no relationship established. There's no like long-term relationship established. So to that extent, it keeps you independent of any one particular silo. So if some go down, new ones show up, you can switch that provider on your website, and all your IndieWeb applications keep working.
And there's one other part. Your website is delegating that authentication to IndieAuth.com, but it doesn't have to. You could implement that yourself.
Yeah, you could actually implement your own IndieAuth protocol handler yourself as well. That's a lot more work. Essentially, if you want to do that, you probably want to implement, your own two-factor auth and all that kind of stuff. And the point is that from a web security standpoint, a lot of these social networks have already implemented really hardened sign-in flows and security and all of that. And we're leveraging their work to make our work better. But if you really don't want to use any social network at all, the other options listed here, you can actually set up a GPG key, public key on your website, which IndieAuth will give you the option of using, and therefore you won't depend on any social media or any other silo at all. It'll just sign a challenge with your public key, send it to you, and then you can try the flow if you want, but there's instructions for setting it up too. Similarly with email, if you happen to use email on your own domain, you can make that work. That uses the persona protocol.
No, you
Did you deprecate that one?
if you go to the actual IndieAuth site, I don't think about the okay. If you go there, he was working on, I think, a week ago.
Yeah, there is a new one that just launched.
Are you referring to Mozilla's persona protocol or something else?
Yeah.
Mozilla's, but it was there. It was deprecated from
Yeah.
You're putting your public key on your homepage, is that right?
Yes. So here's if you go to IndieAuth.com/GPG, it gives you the instructions for doing that. So if you're a GPG kind of person, and what is that called, a cypherpunk, into that kind of thing, it's supported, and IndieAuth works with it without having to use any social media site at all. So you decide how indie you want to be, and that's.
I'd say it feels pretty rad. If anyone's heard of Keybase, which is kind of like the pretty new web startup looking version of old cyberpunk PGP keys. Pretty awesome to go log into a site and it's just sign this garbage, and you copy it into your clipboard, you type a quick thing into Keybase, and it says what's your what's the password for your key. You type that in, it gives you back gobbledygook, which you paste into the website, and it's cool, I verified you. It's a very interesting feeling.
Wait, so it's storing your encrypted private key?
No, this is you run this code locally. You have your key. Basically, it presents a challenge. Is please sign this. I've seen your public key, so sign this challenge. You sign the challenge, and it verifies it with your public key.
Oh, okay.
And because you have published your public key on your homepage,
Yeah,
it says like, well, if your website says that's you, that's you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool and not as.
Yeah, here you go. Here's the challenge.
Huh.
And then.
Oh, so you use like the GPG app or the command line or whatever it is to actually do the signing? Okay.
The Keybase is the very easy one. Like Keybase sign -M, and then you just paste in the challenge text.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize Keybase was a command line tool or.
Yeah, it's a wrapper around. It's sort of like its own command line version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I haven't set this up myself, but you have.
I have, yeah. So it's pretty fun.
So,
but it's very nerdy.
Yeah.
Anybody here minder?
Anybody here what?
I figure everybody has a threshold.
And the reason you want to set up Indie off with your website first is it's one of the most straightforward things to do, whether you use it with social media or if you want to go full indie crypto cipher, you can use GPG. And we have at least one person that has gotten it working here that can help you out with that. But the next step after that, hopefully you want to get around to actually posting something on your own site. We have a resource on IndiewebCamp called Posts, which gives a nice overview of what is a post, how should you do this on your site, you should use a permalink, what kinds of posts are there. And these are all, every one of these kinds of posts that are listed here is something that people started posting on their own websites in the IndieWeb community, and they're roughly in order of frequency. Like people post a lot of notes, and second most probably articles, then replies. A lot of people post RSVPs, photos, likes, check-ins. These are all things you might post on some social media site, but these are all posted on people's personal sites. And you go further down the list, you have all different kinds of posts, like bookmarks. You know, if you're a Delicious user or a Pinboard user, you could post those on your own site if you want to instead. Reposts, so retweets. We figured out how to do that in the web. And then then we have like some more interesting post types like jams, saying, how many of you use thisismyjam.com? Anybody? Do you remember that?
It went out of business, yeah.
It went out. Yeah. It went offline, but there were enough fans of it in the IndieWeb community that we started posting them on our own sites.
Oh, cool.
So that describes how to do that.
Oh, great.
Video, scrobbles, collections. How many of you use Goodreads? Anyone use Goodreads? So Goodreads has a post type that's like, oh, I've read so far in this book. We figured out how to do that on the IndieWeb, and so that's a red post. Comics, or if you're a quantified self-type person, you want to track all the food you eat, or all the exercise you do, or even like the sleep, that's all here as well. So there's a lot of documentation. We kind of document all of our work kind of like breadcrumbs so that others can use it as well. I don't think chicken is listed in there. That's probably just on the fun page. Chicken? You'll have to ask during the break. So the posts are kind of the fundamental building block of an indie website. And to make those work cross-site, we use a microformat standard called H-entry. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but it's based on the Atom standard. If you're familiar with that, it's a way to mark up an entry, the content of an entry, the date time it's published, the title or name of the entry, all that kind of information. Then the next building blocks that people find useful is Posse. And this is perhaps one of the biggest things that distinguish the IndieWeb community from previous distributed or decentralized social web communities, is that we had this observation that people, like, why do people post on social networks? I mean, anyone here?
Because people are there reading them.
Because people are there reading them, right? So to reach your friends.
Right.
And the point was, if you're going to post on your own site, you still want to reach your friends. And so Posse is a method of doing that. Posse is a structured method of saying, here I posted the original on my site, I'm going to automatically post a copy to these social networks where my friends read my stuff. And that way you don't have to anymore. You can kind of walk away from that social network and your friends still see your stuff, even though you're posting on your own site. It's a really important building block, and it helps move people's posting practice from corporate silos to their own personal website, which is an important first step. Like as soon as you feel comfortable, hey, I'm doing this on my own website and I'm still reaching my friends, great, you feel more free to do so. As a personal note, this is a lot of this is what drove me personally, and I started, I've been posting every note to my own website instead of Twitter since 2010, January 1st.
Wow.
And I feel so good that I have like a 6-year archive that's all on my own site, and if Twitter went away, I would have all that still. Navigated, permalinks, everything. So Posse is the next key building block. Once you're posting your own website, posting your own posts, reaching your friends. The next one is, of course, interacting with other indie websites, and that's what the web mention protocol helps you do. So if someone posts to their independent website and you want to reply to it, and you want comments to show up on their website, you use a protocol called web mention. I'm not going to go into the details of it, except to say that a bunch of us in the IndiewebCamp community have been working for about 2 years now with the W3C to standardize some of these protocols. And web mention is now what's called a W3C candidate recommendation, which is a pretty big deal. This means that the standard is considered done enough for like the issues are all resolved, and implementation should go ahead and implement this. And assuming that we don't find any major issues, it becomes a W3C recommendation, which is pretty huge. This is kind of awesome because it's the first time that any kind of site-to-site mentioning or linking protocol has actually made it to this stage of the standardization process. Web mention is the replacement for pingback and trackback and all those previous forms, which were never quite standardized. And so by taking to the formal W3C standardization process, we resolve all kinds of issues. There are dozens of implementations of web mention. Like there are more implementations of web mention than the implementations of all other link back protocols combined, and trackback and pingback and all of those. So more code bases have got this working than any other protocol. So that's pretty slick. The next protocol building block that I will show you is micropub. This is what Marty was demonstrating with Quill, talking to his web server. This is a protocol for people to write web apps that then post to web servers. So if you want to write a client that runs on your mobile device or runs like a mobile website on your mobile web device that then posts to a site, micropub is the protocol that it implements.
And there is one thing to note about it. In all cases, it's the site that you're posting to that decides how it's displayed. So the same thing with web mentions. Web mentions, the site decides how they're going to display them. So same thing. So basically, the protocol has nothing to do with the display. The site decides what it's going to do with the information it's given, which is the common thread between the two.
Yeah.
Well, basically, you decide what you want to look like. It's just transferring.
Your site receives a web mention or receives a micropub post, and you decide what to do with it. So the sort of freedom of presentation is still yours, and that's pretty key. Micropub is a replacement for AtomPub. Is anyone familiar with that? It was a version of the, it's a protocol version of the Atom format, where it's like, here's a protocol that lets you post Atom posts. Several years old now, but never got critical adoption. It also replaces the XML RPC meta weblog API. Sorry. I don't know if anyone is familiar with meta weblog. Anybody? It's a very old protocol that was developed back in the Blogger removable type days for posting to blogs in the same way as micropub, but is dependent on sending your username and password, giving full access. I don't know if you noticed when Marty was working through the micropub flow with Quill, he didn't have to give Quill full access to his website. He never gave his username or password to Quill. He just authenticated it with OAuth the same way that you would authenticate a Twitter client. And that's really important because if you decide to use a tool today and then tomorrow decide I don't want to trust them anymore, you can revoke their OAuth token. You don't have to actually keep supporting their access to your site. And worse, you don't have to reset your password because you gave your password. So that's another protocol that's come out of the IndiewebCamp community that's now a W3C candidate recommendation, which as of like last week, that's a pretty big deal, and we're pretty happy about that. Let's see, where does that take us? Oh yeah, this is and just to show you, this is the post. This is on the mobile version. Here's the desktop version. Pretty slick.
people.
You know, there's that lovely vista in the background.
So that's the overview of the building blocks that I wanted to give everyone. There's not that many of them, and that's good. That's deliberate. Howdy, here for IndiewebCamp?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Can you place the URL in the chat of that?
For that,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think contact us a bit earlier, it's in the circle section.
Okay.
There, if you want to pick one.
Oh, there it is.
If you don't want a name tag, you don't have to. They're on the white table. All the way
No, I got page not found.
They're not required. Either way, we're gonna have to stop them over and check it.
Okay, so that takes us to, it's now 12:08. We're only about 8 minutes behind on our schedule.
We thought.
That tends to happen. Yeah.
Building block within an hour or so.
The rest of the day we run like a bar camp. How many of you have been to a bar camp for IndiewebCamp? About half the people here. Awesome. The bar camp is basically a framework for running a conference as a participant-driven conference. It starts with all you have is a session grid, which is what you see over there on the glass wall. And we have 3 separate rooms that we're using for discussion sessions. And the way it works is, if you have something that you heard or taught or have been dying to do a brainstorming or discussion session about today, you write down your topic, write down your name, and perhaps the same as your topic, write down a session hashtag. Give a short introduction to what that is, and then you post it on one of the squares that we have. So we actually have, those are the first 4 blocks. We have a 5th session block at the end as well. We have 45-minute sessions that start at 1:30. So we're going to do session scheduling right after this, and then we're going to do a group photo and lunch. And then we have sessions starting at 1:30 after lunch. When you're proposing sessions, look and see if someone else has proposed a similar session. If they have, try and collaborate with them. There's not a lot of us here, and so we'll probably get into like just a few small group discussions, which is totally fine. But
we don't need to fill 3 rooms unless we need to.
we'll fill as many rooms as we need to. Yeah. And the session hashtag is important because that's what you use to create the Etherpad. Then when we talked about the Etherpads, etherpad.indieweb.org / your hashtag creates an Etherpad for that, where then as a session facilitator, you should make sure that either you take notes or have people collaboratively take notes in your session there as well, so that we can capture it and put it on the wiki for later. See what awesome conclusions you've come to, what new discoveries you've made, what plans you have for creating the most awesome indie website tomorrow. So today's discussion sessions, and tomorrow's our hack day. So just as we're doing a bar camp for discussion sessions today, we'll do session proposals for different hack or development or design sessions tomorrow, where people that are interested in building similar things can sort of co-locate in a room and hack on it together, so that if you get stuck, you can ask each other questions and such. And then at the end of the day tomorrow, we're going to do demos. It's kind of like what we did earlier today, where everyone demonstrated their homepage, stuff that they do with it, except you show what's the thing that you got done. However small, however large, doesn't matter.
Also, for those of you that can guess, the entirety of this discussion has been streamed, which means we have remote participants. If any of you want a demo, we'll figure that out at the appropriate time.
Do we have any viewers now?
There are currently 5 people watching, according to the.
Are they all bots?
Not that we know. We know that if you scroll up, there's hi from Sweden. If you scroll a little more, there were 2 more. I think I saw a hi from Tampa, a hi from Brussels. So that's 3 people.
Could be human.
Kevin, looks like Kevin's in the chat.
I think Chris Aldridge was on a few minutes ago. He's running IndiewebCamp LA in November.
actually talked about doing a IndiewebCamp Florida, because there seems to be a growing critical mass of folks that are in Florida doing a new community. So hopefully in 2017 we'll figure out when to do one.
IndiewebCamp is Disneyland. Disney World.
Orlando, if we end up doing one there. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Is there gonna be a summit next year?
There will.
I'm waiting for the tagline.
In Portland, I'm sure sometime in June, very likely. Yeah.
What is the summit? How is that different from the camp?
The summit is our main annual meetup. It's different from the camp in that we have more preset sessions, exploring and discussing like what's new, what things got done. Oftentimes we use the opportunity to launch new things. Like this new entire wiki theme was launched at the summit, as well as we had a one-day leaders summit before the summit where we talked about things like, hey, should we change our identity? And we did, from IndiewebCamp.com to IndiewebCamp.org. We adopted a new logo. That's new. We have stickers of that somewhere. So if you didn't get one,
There's also some near the bagels.
excellent. And if you didn't get bagels or coffee, there are some bagels and coffee as well.
Although it's almost lunch.
It is lunch.
Also, we had, not this year, but the previous year, we had the remote pre-summit, pre-terminology. We had 2 remote sessions this year. We had, basically, the summit was, there was a remote group here in New York, the year before last, and another remote group. It was that was IndiewebCamp East. And then Germany came on and referred to themselves as Far East.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago. We had a triple location simultaneous summit.
Was that 14 or 15?
14.
That long?
Yeah.
Or time flies, right? I thought that was last year.
All right. If everyone has an idea of what, or at least a few of you have an idea of what you want to talk about, let's all go over to where the grid is, and we can do our session schedule for the afternoon. That's okay. We'll post on the video when we're done.
So I'm going to stop the live broadcast.
And as a matter of facilities, I'm not sure of the restrooms.
Oh yeah, so restrooms are just like directly straight through there, so around the kitchen or around that way.
For those of you remotely viewing, this now concludes our morning. Thank you for your participation. Please check out the chat for afternoon.
And where can we check out the chat? What's the URL?
Chat.indieweb.org. IndiewebCamp.org/chat. I still lost track of that file. It's chat. You finally settled on that?
Yes.
Okay. Chat.indieweb.org. Thank you to the 3 people who are still on.